So I've heard you talk a lot here about working with a lot of people that have very different experience of growing up, different socioeconomic background, different races, different geographies, different current experience. You were at that point still a single woman. You had an adopted child. Very different. How was that like for you? Was it challenging for you to be able to connect with people who are really different than you?
See, I think that at the core, we're all the same, right? We all have a heart. We want to be seen, heard, known, loved, cared about. And every good gift gives this wonderful opportunity to take the time to do that, right? And if you show interest, because I am interested in the women that come to us, I do want to know what's going on in their lives. I feel like God makes those connections. I can remember when I did programs in the schools being told, well, our students aren't going to listen to you because you're not Black. And then I'd go into that school or even that church, and God sometimes created this amazing connection where the women were listening and laughing and being involved. I think that's the work of God, right? Because on the outward, yeah, here comes this middle class white woman, but we're talking about what we all want. We're talking about relationships.
The commonalities, yeah. Hey, everybody, it's Clint, the Ivy League trucker, and today we've got the real pleasure to have Jill Page Goss, who is a friend of mine, a friend from church, somebody I've known many years, and I actually served on the board of her ministry, which she'll talk about, Every Good Gift, that she's currently involved in. But I've known Jill from before then, and I would say my quick summary of Jill is she's really dedicated her life to serving other people, and she worked in protecting the unborn life ministries for a long time. And there's probably other things she'll tell us about. And she's currently working in Every Good Gift, which is a ministry to help single mothers navigate their economic reality and give them the skill sets to get out of cycles of poverty. And it's a fascinating ministry as well. So, Jill, how you doing this morning?
Hi, Clint. I'm doing well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm good. I was just telling Jill, I'm in the truck here getting unloaded in Detroit. I'm not driving right now, but the customer is unloading me back there, and I'm here in the sleeper berth. And Jill's in the Philly area. And so, Jill, tell us a little about how you got to these ministries that are focused on serving other people. Is that something you always wanted to do, or you got into it as you got older?
So I think I have always wanted to help people.
Mhm.
And I was a music therapist after my training in college and my graduate degree and loved working with elderly people. When I started going to New Life Church, I heard about abortion and I had it was something I hadn't really thought about. And as I talked with other people and read and learned, I realized I needed to get involved in doing something to protect human life. And as I did that, I saw that not only is the unborn child at risk, but the mother is harmed and the
Okay.
father is affected. And so, kind of what I'm looking at is how do we help people prevent that harm and how do we care for those who have experienced abortion? So that's been kind of motivating my ministry career.
So is this so you went from the music therapy, did you get kind of directly into the rights of the unborn ministry at right after that, or
Yeah, so I went to work with Urban Family Council, which was a pro-life and pro-family organization. And it was not exactly what I expected because my first assignment was to come up with programs for teenagers on saving sex for marriage,
Mhm.
which was a little terrifying for me to think about doing that. But 19 years of talking with kids in the schools and churches was such a wonderful privilege. And we kept creating new programs because as I talked with kids, I saw, wait, the reason that it looks like why not why not wait for marriage is they think marriage is not worth waiting for. They think everybody cheats and all men cheat, everybody gets divorced. They were hopeless about marriage.
Mhm.
So I noticed that what the girls that I was talking with wanted was relationships. It wasn't sex. And they thought that was the way to get the relationship. So we talked about what do healthy relationships really look like? What's part of a healthy relationship? How can you tell when you're in one, when you're not in one.
Mm,
And then teenagers would say, "I wish I had heard this earlier." So we did programs for younger kids. We had a puberty program and we had some character education programs all the way down to preschool.
okay, okay. And so when you first got into this ministry and speaking to folks affected by abortion, how old were you roughly when you started that?
I was early 30s.
Really? Okay, okay. And you were single, right? Not married?
Correct.
Did anybody ever push back on you and say, "You don't get it because 'cause you're single?"
Yes. Sometimes kids said that more often. They would ask me all the time, "Are you a virgin?" And when I would tell them, "First of all, you shouldn't be asking anybody that. I'm willing to talk about this. This is something that I'm living too." Then I
Mhm.
there was respect for that, and multiple times a group of students would just start clapping, like they didn't think that was possible, that you could be a young adult and still be waiting.
Interesting. So, you find yourself kinda speaking against the culture a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
what okay. So, you go from that, and Urban Family Council, was that a national ministry or was it more Philadelphia based?
So when I started there, it was Philadelphia Christian Action Council, which was the local affiliate
Okay,
of CAC, but it became an independent organization.
okay. And so you're involved in that for many years, and
Yes.
then did you do anything professionally or part-time before you got involved with Every Good Gift, or was it a direct transition?
Oh, then I went to work with Bethany Christian Services.
Tell the folks
And
what that is, because a lot of our listeners probably don't know what that is.
so Bethany is an adoption and foster care agency, and I was brought into the local branch to bring Safe Families for Children to the area, to the Philadelphia area. And Safe Families for Children was a wonderful ministry where, in order to keep kids out of foster care, it was designed to help families facing a temporary crisis by having their children hosted by Christian families. And so, say a mother is going to go deliver a baby, but she has no one to watch her other children,
Mhm.
host family could host that child. Or the house, they can't afford utilities and they're trying to get the utilities turned back on. Things that could have a child end up in foster care could just be hosted. And it was something where the parents retained all the parental rights and could have the child back as soon as they were ready.
Okay, so you're trying to insert yourself before it gets to a point where government social services have to intervene and
Right.
potentially change the family dynamic.
Right, and when I did say Families for Children,
Mhm.
I wrote a grant and started a program that they had not done before, which was for young adult mothers who were pregnant or new moms to live with a host family for up to 1 year, which is much longer than a typical Safe Families hosting.
Mm.
And that showed me. So with Urban Family Council, I saw teen parents in the high schools and sometimes in the middle schools, worked with them. And then with Bethany, with Safe Families, I was working with young adult women who were parents and got to see close up what some of the issues and challenges were for them.
So across these folks, the working to talk to people about the preborn and then also talking to people who have had children very young and what they're dealing with. Were there any common themes about common beliefs, themes, behaviors, or anything that you typically were addressing?
Sure, addressing a different maybe a different way of looking at relationships
Mm,
and hopefully with teenagers helping them to see the way to get healthier relationships is not by engaging in physical activity, but it's by taking the time to get to know a person and building a relationship. But what I was seeing in the schools, I couldn't always figure out why was I seeing girls with these long, expensive braids and nails and so forth, and yet they were in poor communities.
mhm,
And I was trying to understand why people do what they do. Why would kids say to me, "Oh, yeah, I wanna be a brain surgeon. I wanna play in the NBA." But when I would ask, "Okay, what are you doing to get there? Are you taking science classes during the summer? Are you on the school basketball team? They'd say no, as if that was unrelated. And so I was getting snippets of what it was like to live in generational poverty, but I
Mm,
couldn't put it all together. When I was at Bethany, I took a course. It was like a one-day seminar in Bridges Out of Poverty. They explained that you could grow up in wealth, you could grow up in middle class, or you could grow up in generational poverty, two or more generations who live in poverty. And each of those three groups has its own hidden rules and values. That's why I couldn't figure it out. I was looking with my middle class upbringing. Why are people doing what they're doing? If they want to be a brain surgeon, why aren't they planning now so that they'll be going to college and all of that? And the students that I was primarily working with in the Philadelphia public schools were coming from generational poverty, where you're just trying to solve one crisis after another. The young moms that I worked with when I was at Bethany, I was seeing they had the courage to have their child, even though they didn't have housing and they didn't have a car and they didn't have a college education and a great job, but they were living according to a different set of rules. So it seemed that, and this is confirmed as I read and talked to many people about this, in order to get the job that's going to enable you to meet your goals and do for your child what you want to do, you need to learn some of the middle class hidden rules and values. You don't have to give up what you've learned, but you need to learn these additional rules so that you will be successful in jobs.
yeah, that's fascinating. And when I was on the board of Every Good Gift, which we'll get to in a minute here, Jill gave us the board members, and we were a mix of businessman, pastor, social work folks, accountants, people with various skill sets to come alongside Jill as she got this ministry up off the ground from the start. A book, and I'm blanking on the name of it, about this exact dynamic that there's a poor mindset, a middle class mindset, and a wealthy mindset. And for example, they even had like 30-question typing tool that you'd answer that put you in each one. And for
Mhm.
example, a poor person would know where all the food banks are and when they're open and what they give out and who they allow. They would know how to physically defend themselves in a fight. They tend to not have tools to fix things because they can't afford them. And if they got a windfall of money, they would end up just giving it to all the other people in their life who have their hand out. Whereas a middle class person, you know, they are thinking about, you know, work hard, get education, get a good job, et cetera, and saving and investing if you can. And then a wealthy person who uses wealth to kind of insulate themselves from the rest of the world and tasks would be thinking, oh, well, my favorite restaurant is on the left bank in Paris and that sort of thing. So it's not just the presence of money and even the the geography, it's the mindset which is driven by the environment. And that was a real eye opener for me. And often middle class folks can swoop in and not understand the environment, the mindset, and the lived experience of the people they're trying to help. Do you have anything to add to that?
I can talk about this forever, but,
Yeah.
first of all, you're downplaying your role in Every Good Gift. Clinton was the first board president, so instrumental in getting this started and leading. But, yeah, I think there are these hidden rules and values or mindset, and my middle class upbringing kept me from realizing there was a different set of ways of looking at things, and so I started looking at people differently and understanding, "Oh, that's why you're doing that." And I saw all sorts of beautiful things. I'm so interested in saving and make sure that I'm taken care of in the future that I'm not as generous as some
Mm,
people who have next to nothing, and yet they're willing to help out. So there are strengths to each of the groups, but it's just helpful to know that this is not the only way we can put people into groups, but this
sure.
this is really helpful to understand why people do what they do.
Yeah. And one last point about that was when someone makes changes in their life to leave generational poverty, it's not just now they have money and they can do stuff. It's in some sense, they feel like they're leaving and possibly even betraying their people. because they're going to kind of go over to the other side and now be middle class, and they're everyone they know is in kind of generational poverty and living that life, and it becomes a challenge of its own to navigate that transition.
And people can give you a hard time
Mm,
about making that transition, acting like you think you're better than them
right,
because you're in college or because you're moving out of the neighborhood, those kind of things.
right,
Mhm.
right. You talked about it a little bit there. So this tell us about the genesis of Every Good Gift, which is the name of the ministry that you run now. Kinda how did it start? What's going on? What drives you?
Right. So, just one quick point now
Mhm.
about the difference between those 3 groups is
Yeah.
it's not an intelligence thing.
No.
People in middle class or wealth are not more intelligent. They just have been given certain things that others haven't been given.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely. Yeah.
that's important to know. And it's also material generational poverty. It doesn't mean that someone is spiritually poor,
Mm,
right?
mm.
You can have a wonderful depth of your Christian faith, but be materially poor over generations.
Yeah, that's really true, and I think it helps us in this endeavor. I remember trying to explain this dynamic to my oldest son, John,
Mhm.
when he went to college. Now he grew up in a upper middle class background with strong family and strong extended family, and he went to school in West Virginia. It was his first time of seeing a place that was different than where he had grown up, the Philadelphia suburbs, and at one point, he was home just kinda complaining, like, "Why don't these folks basically grab their bootstraps and pull themselves up and get out of whatever situation they're in?" Which is a
Right,
lower socioeconomic status than what he grew up with. And I really had to sit him down and say, "Son, you've done a lot of good things in your life, and you've, taken initiative and agency and done all these things, but, like, you did not make yourself. God placed you in a family of 2 stable, loving parents, a father who could make a certain amount of money to allow his wife to stay home, which was rare even in our peer group. And you grew up in a certain type of house, a certain type of family, and a certain type of schools, and certain type of educational opportunities and stability." And I said, "That's all environmental, son. You had nothing to do with that." And the folks that you're talking to in West Virginia, they're living the death of the coal industry, and everyone's
mhm,
scrambling and trying to find different work and having their communities economically hollowed out. That's their lived experience. And you're not, you know, walk a mile in their shoes is what I was trying to tell him.
right.
And he was about 20 at the time. And to his credit, he he pulled up and said, "Oh, okay, I got to think about that." And, so it's a similar dynamic,
Mhm.
that's going on there. But back to Every Good Gift, how did that get started?
So it got started, my position was they eliminated my position at Bethany, and
Okay.
the person who was my boss said, "You really care about single moms. Do something with single moms." So I spent a few months and I read and prayed and talked to lots of people and wanted to pursue this idea. If the moms that I've been working with for 25 years are going to make it, in most cases, they're going to need a really good job. How can we create something that would give the skills needed to have those jobs?
Mm,
And then I saw a book called Christ Kitchen by Jan Martinez, read that, and she was doing it. She had created a job training ministry and understood what I'd been seeing all these years with generational poverty and people making choices that aren't necessarily the best and the emotional issues. She put it all together in this wonderful book. And so then I could say, this has been done before. And I gathered a group around me, the board of directors who had gifts in different areas and said, this is what I want to do. I went back and forth talking and interacting with Jan Martinez. Her group was women in poverty, but they were women of all ages. They weren't bringing children with them in order to help the young single mothers that I wanted to target. We learned that childcare was going to be an important part of it. That how do we offer part-time jobs? What can we make that the women don't need a skill? What can I teach them how to do?
mhm.
And so we started off with greeting cards and gift baskets. And then we stopped the greeting cards and we brought in sewing, and we've been sewing a lot of our products ever since. And God has been gracious. He has provided board members with skills that I didn't even know they had when I invited them to be on the board. He brought volunteers. So one of the volunteers, she's our creative director. She's my aunt, and she sews, and she suggested having the women sew it. I could not picture how we could teach women to sew, and she said she could do it, and she has done it for 11 years now. The women love learning to sew. Here's something they've created, and they did it themselves, and, it's really fun to have somebody sew something and say, "Can I take a picture of this?" Or create a gift basket, and it's beautiful,
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
wanna take a picture so they can show other people what they've done.
Yeah, that's cool. So, what I'm taking away from that is it's really you got to do what a lot of people would love to do, which is to have a passion and to work out from that. But a passion that's also informed by all of your work experience to date with people in
Mhm,
crisis, with people in impoverished situations. But then you were able to step back. Maybe you were given the gift of being let go, and then you took a pause and then you said, okay, this is the kernel of what I think I want to do. These are my target people, single mothers in crisis with don't have the support or the skills to get themselves out of that. And then you were able to build a ministry or a helping for that. That's really cool because you kind of build the thing around what you are passionate about. And then also the ministry has the aspect of I'm hearing creativity. You're allowing them to be creative, which is
mhm,
very much a kind of like a self it feeds your heart, right, to be creative.
mhm.
And then it's also directly related to work and the ability to work. So, Jill, where does the ministry stand now and what's it accomplishing?
Over the last 11 years, we've had just over 180 women work with us. That's not everybody stayed a long time. My goal is that they will stay at least several months. Some people come for one day and a crisis happens in their life and we never see them again. Some people, we ask people to stay for a year. It's a 1-year program. Some people don't want to leave at the end of that year, but many women make it for 3 months, 6 months, or a year. My hope is that even if somebody only stays for 2 weeks, what they get is they see the love of Christ shown to them by our staff and our volunteers. They have come to a welcoming environment where they are seen and heard, and I believe that's a reflection of how God sees and hears us.
Hmm.
When you are a poor young single mother, often of different races, and you go to something like the county assistance office, I am absolutely certain that you can feel unseen and unheard and like you don't matter and nobody cares. We want them to know you matter to us. We are going to get to know you. We're going to delight in you and in your child. We're going to try and help you. And part of that may be uncomfortable. We're asking you to do things that you might not have had to do before, like come to work every day you're scheduled to come on time, not look at your phone all the time, all these things that are gonna help you in whatever job you get. We are trying to fill a need that other agencies don't meet in the same way. So for young single mothers, there are pregnancy centers which do incredible work. There are housing ministries which are essential. I would say the biggest felt need of our women would be housing.
Hmm.
So those ministries are so important, but we don't want to see people stop there, just, okay for a short period of time, nor do the other ministries. But we want to give them those job skills so that they can get a job and get their own housing. We see, some of the women stay in touch and we get to watch the kids grow up and hear what they're doing. And some of our women have gotten married. We've had women become I think of one that got a good government job, one that became a nurse, another one is in nursing school, one started her own side business. She has a decent job now, but she has this really fun business on the side, and I've learned things from her. So it's been uh, I feel so privileged to have gotten to spend time sitting and talking with women whose lives have been different than mine, but they're beautiful. They gave me a new perspective on things that I just wasn't experiencing in my middle class community. There's never been a mom that I met who didn't have the same goals as every other mother I've ever met. Everybody wants a good future for their child, right? So the women who come to Every Good Gift, they want something more than what they had. They don't want their child to end up in foster care. They don't want to be moved from foster home to foster home. They want their child to be safe. They want to have good housing, a good, safe school, a stable future.
It's fascinating. Coming from different worlds is a huge theme here. I remember when I was on the board early on, and I have a market research background, so I did this focus group with some of the early women that were in the program. We had elements of helping them learn job skills. There was a weekly Bible study. There was learning the soft skills of work, which is dealing with your coworkers. And if you had an argument with your boyfriend the night before, you still have to show up for work and, punctuality and things like that. But also there was, how do I interview? How do I dress for an interview? How do I research a job? How do I find jobs? There's all these things. And then the ministry is meant to be an intervention, not a long-term thing in their life to change the arc of their life and that of their children from multi-generational poverty to stable work and a stable economic ground for a family. And one of the things that I did in that focus group was I thought that they would kind of have this attitude of, "Oh, you're yet again somebody trying to help me and looking down on me," and things like that. And it really wasn't like that at all. They really talked about the dignity of work, that my child needs to see me working. This is good for them to see, and this is good for me as well. And that was really powerful to hear them talk about that. So I think there's a lot of things that the ministry is giving them to be able to do that. A big theme of the podcast, Jill, is how do we connect with people and really see people who are different than us, and how do we get there to a place where we can do that? So I've heard you talk a lot here about working with a lot of people that have very different experience of growing up, different socioeconomic background, different races, different geographies, different current experience. You were at that point still a single woman, you had an adopted child, so you were very different. How was that like for you? Was it challenging for you to be able to connect with people who are really different than you?
See, I think that at the core, we're all the same, right? We all have a heart. We want to be seen, heard, known, loved, cared about. And and every good gift gives this wonderful opportunity to take the time to do that, right? And if you show interest, because I am interested in the women that come to us, I do want to know what's going on in their lives. I feel like God makes those connections. I can remember when I did programs in the schools being told, "Well, our students aren't gonna listen to you because you're not Black." And then I'd go into that school or even that church, and and God sometimes created this amazing connection where the women were listening and laughing and being involved, and I think that's the work of God, right? Because on the outward, yeah, here comes this middle class white woman, but we're talking about what we all want. We're talking about relationships.
Mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah,
One y
the commonalities, yeah.
Yeah, you had asked what the ministry is like now, and I wanted to follow up on that
Mhm.
just a little. Our model is that rather than having a building that's every good gift that everybody comes to, we wanted to be in multiple locations. Our women typically are using public transit, and so we're in churches right now that they can get to on public transit. It may take 2 buses or 2 buses and a subway to get to this part-time job. So we would like to expand rather than getting big there. We want the women to be known and be seen, have the opportunity to feel comfortable and open up. So we wanna be small in multiple locations throughout the
Mhm.
greater Philadelphia area. We have 2 locations now, Glenside, which is in Montgomery County, and Kensington, which is in Philadelphia. But most of the women that work with us have grown up in the city and have had some similar experiences.
Yeah, and, Kensington is a pretty parts of Kensington are pretty rough, pretty down socioeconomically. And Glenside is kind of your typical suburban, outside the city location.
Mhm.
So let me peel your onion back a little bit. So how did you personally, is this just kind of in your heart and soul right from the beginning as wanting to help people and see people as they are, or were there particular experiences along the way that really changed you or moved you in that direction?
Interesting question. I can remember as a child, I wanted to be a doctor,
Okay.
and I noticed a pattern that every time somebody got hurt, I would run away and cry, even as a teenager, and I thought, "I don't think this is gonna work, being a doctor." And then I heard about music therapy where I could use the music. I loved learning the piano and music and help people at the same time. So, that was a natural fit. I did that, absolutely loved it, and then when I learned about what was happening with abortion and with people being hurt in the process, even though I loved music therapy, I felt called by God to go do something to help people, protect them. So I maybe it has been a long-standing desire to help people.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting. One thing that I'd like to explore with people in the pod, which is, how do we connect with others? How are we empathetic? Is how you get there. Like for example, I'm I was a little more introverted, life of the mind, self actualized, self driven through most of my life. And then as I grew and matured, I became more interested in other folks, etc. But one of the things of going through my season of loss and getting to a much more humble place in the world has been through the crucible of suffering and loss that my eyes have opened up to more people, not just people who have suffered and lost, certainly those, but to the dynamic of that in the human experience. And it's really made me see people at the heart level more
Mhm,
because my heart has been softened, opened up, eyes have been opened up, however you wanna put it, to more people. And also, I've been disabused of my pride and my like, I'm successful, I'm, even though I don't wanna say it, better than you. Kind of very, very painfully disabused of that. So, I think it's interesting how people get there. I think a lot of people start with the heart of it, but you're living it out in serving folks who, by and large, do not have a similar experience than you do. If somebody comes at you, either that you're helping or and says, "You're not like me, you don't understand,"
mhm.
what is your response to that? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think I don't understand.
Mm,
I don't know what it is to be poor.
mm,
God, had me born into a middle class family. I don't know what it is to lie in bed at night wondering if I'm safe, afraid to fall asleep. I haven't wondered if there was ever going to be food to eat for dinner. I don't understand, but tell me about it. I
mm,
want to understand.
mm. So it starts with a desire to understand and to genuinely listen.
Hmm.
And one thing I've always thought about is, in our current 21st century Western context, it's a very kinda hurly-burly, polarized time, at least in America, maybe in a lot of the West, sociologically, politically, etcetera. But one thing I've always said is there is no negative response to genuinely wanting to help somebody. When you like, I know that your your faith undergirds what you do, but it's one thing to kinda have a polemic and go at somebody with, "This is what is right. This is what you should believe. Here are the reasons why." It is a much different thing to come alongside somebody and say, "I see you. Even though I didn't come from your place, I see your suffering, your situation, and what can I do to understand you and to help?" That is a totally different way, even though people may be informed by different faith traditions, by different, places it started from. There's just no getting around. If you genuinely are trying to help somebody, it's hard for them to get their back up, is what I'm getting at. Here's another question. So you have a passion for this, you have skills for it, you've seen the fruits of it in other people's lives. Do you think these skills, this empathy and being able to see people is transferable to other people? Or is this something you have to be born with?
I tend to think that the way I learned about something is what will happen for somebody else.
Mhm.
And so we do volunteer training.
Yeah.
And in our training, we're trying to help people understand what generational poverty is and what trauma is,
Mhm.
and how can people respond to that, and how do people make a change in life? How does God work in somebody's life? So my hope is that that is something, and what I've seen from the people who do volunteer is they're touched by what they're seeing, they're helped by what they're learning, and my thought was if you don't understand, you're gonna get discouraged and you're gonna give up.
Right.
You're gonna say, "Why isn't this person here today? I'm here." But
Mhm.
if we can tell you ahead of time, this is how life is done differently, we're trying to teach an additional way of dealing with challenges, but don't give up when somebody doesn't come.
Right.
And our volunteers have been very understanding about that, and we have volunteers that have been with us all 11 years.
So, yeah, my follow-up question to that, have you seen the growth, the change in people? Like, they started here, like, "Okay, I'm here. Where's the other person?" And they got to a place, they learned the skills, the hard skills, I guess, of doing this. Have you seen people grow and develop along the way?
I think people are having their eyes open, but generally the people that come and want to be part of us
Mhm.
already had a desire to help others,
Right.
and maybe they're learning more about what somebody else's experience could have been. I think there are people who want to help those who are in poverty, but they don't rub shoulders with them on a regular basis, and
Right.
we're giving them the opportunity to work with people who have had different experiences and to share their faith. Everybody faces different challenges, but the
Mhm.
way that God would have us look at those challenges is the same for everybody. The encouragements, the promises in scripture are something that we all need. And so I think it actually is helpful that our volunteers and our staff live life, not not live in the same house, but are doing life with people who maybe haven't had been raised in a good, stable, Bible believing church. And so if one of our volunteers is going through something really hard, we can pray for them. We're not gonna necessarily share all the details,
Right.
but my hope is that that shows the women how to hang on to the Lord even when life is hard, right?
Yeah,
So
well, there was a
yeah.
lot in what you just said there. I think the aspect of this one anothering thing, and you said earlier in the conversation that you didn't want every good gift to basically become institutionalized and go toward, we're just another social service agency that's big and intimidating and, you know, at worst cold and not understanding. You wanted to keep it at the local level in small groups of women that can open up. And what you're talking about there is what we're doing right now, two people talking to each other, seeing each other, and having the time and the space to do that. And, as institutions grow, that can get lost, right?
Mhm,
You alluded to that. And I think, yeah, there's just so many things that you're giving these women. The state is pretty good at writing a check, but it can also that dynamic can just lead to multi-generational poverty
mhm.
because there's the state cannot look someone in the eye and say, "I see you, and I'm still gonna be here even if you don't show up and are having a bad day," and have this kinda arc of time for a relationship with a person. One thing you mentioned also that I might not be clear is a key early insight was childcare. In order for
Right.
these women to because normally it's like I go to the minimum wage job, I gotta take 2 buses and a subway, and I gotta find childcare for my kid, and I'm like
Mhm,
net 0 on the cash flow or close to it. It's not worth it. I'll just fall back on the government assistance, and that is an easier pathway for me. So you're trying to break that dynamic, and the childcare is free, meaning it's volunteer done by the ministry for them while they're there. So it's interesting how that key, just that one dynamic, can make such a difference for them.
right, we're trying to break down barriers that would keep somebody from working.
Mhm.
It's interesting, though, we do have a childcare leader that's part of our staff who came to us as a young single mom and graduated from us and asked to be in that paid position, and she's been with us for a number of years, doing a great job. She loves children,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and the moms see that their children are cared for. So I think the childcare takes care of multiple challenges. One is that women know they can get subsidized childcare, but they have to be working a certain number of hours. I think it's
Mhm.
around 20 in order to get that. But how do you get the job when you don't have the childcare? And then another is that I think that a lot of our women have been mistreated and they're very protective of their children to make sure that they will not be mistreated. So even having your child go across the hall to the church nursery is frightening. I've had women say, no one else has ever held my child or, taken care of my child. So this is an important step when women can see that the volunteers and the staff at Every Good Gift can love and care for and delight in my child. That perhaps can help women move into, all right, I need to go get subsidized childcare so that I can get a job and so I can move on ahead.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, there's just a lot there. Well, every good gift is there a website, or if people want to learn more about the ministry or support it, what should
Yes.
they do?
So everygoodgift.org is our website. There are videos there. You'll see some of the women in the videos. There's a store there if you'd like to see our products. There are volunteer applications there if you'd like to get involved and use the contact form on there if you'd like to get in touch with me or get our prayer requests. We have a prayer meeting every month on Zoom that you can join. And we have a newsletter that we send out 6 times a year.
Very good. Thanks for that. And what was that book, the book that you had us read about the 3 types of people?
That was Bridges Out of Poverty. There are several authors.
Okay.
It was Ruby Payne is one of them, Payne.
Okay, we'll put a link to that and to Jan Martinez's Christ Kitchen in the show notes and,
Great.
to the ministry. Well, awesome, Jill. I think this has been an awesome conversation. Are you ready for some lightning round questions?
Maybe.
Here we go. Here we go. Only one way to find out. Favorite thing to read that is not work related?
I read World Magazine, but if I was on the beach, I would like
Yeah.
a novel,
Okay.
that's not scary, has a little bit of romance, a little bit of humor.
Okay. Okay. Money is no object. 1 week anywhere in the world.
Ah, either Paris, I've never been there, or the
Mm.
beach, almost anywhere.
And the beach, almost anywhere. Okay. Favorite quality of your husband?
Mm, kindness and generosity.
There you go. You guys are well matched that way. Goofiest thing your kid ever said to you?
Hmm. Now, Shanita was 15 when I adopted her, so she wasn't doing the little two-year-old goofy things.
Mhm.
Can't think of that one, sorry.
Can't think of that one. Okay. And apart from Jesus, if you could get one day with anyone living or dead, who would it be?
Mm, I'm not Catholic, but it would be Mother Teresa.
Oh, really? Why?
Yeah, because I've read a couple biographies of her, and it's just amazing, her faith and how she loved people, and I would love to learn to do that better.
And favorite band?
So, not a band, but I love the Philadelphia Orchestra and the Bucks County Symphony Orchestra.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's some high-end stuff, the Philadelphia Orchestra. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thanks so much. And, here's what I heard in the conversation, that number one, I think the big theme with you is that we're really a lot more the same than we are different. We really want the
Mhm,
same things. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be valued. We want to be loved. And specifically in your context, mothers really want the best for their children. And if they've come from difficult or abusive situations, they want it even more. They're even more protective because they know what the negative looks like and how it has affected them. And that's allowed you to reach across to folks with very different backgrounds, and serve them and see them. So I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty relevant to where we're trying to take the podcast, which is how do we become empathetic and see other people and get involved with other people? And I think there's different pathways for everybody. For me, it was the pain and suffering side, which opened my eyes a bit. And for you, you had a heart of it and then got experientially involved in it much earlier. So I think for everybody, it's a little bit different.
mhm.
But any parting shots for the audience?
I would say take the time to talk to people instead of making assumptions.
Mm,
Can I give one quick example?
sure, please.
There was some incident in the news years ago with police, and I was talking with the women to get their thoughts on it, and what I learned is that everyone wasn't taught the same thing growing up that I was. I was
Mhm.
taught the police are your friend. If you're in trouble, you go to the police. And they were told, stay away from the police. They are not your friend.
Right.
And I thought how different life looks at that very basic way of looking at
Yeah.
police, right? It's scary.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's the kind of thing I think you only learn by sitting down and talking and asking questions.
I think that's a good word to end on. Well, Jill, spring is almost here, though it's winter's struggling to hold, but we're getting a little cold weather again here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
But, stay warm today, and when I see you, give you a hug.
Thank you, Clint.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Well, there you have it. I really enjoyed our conversation with Jill Page Goss, the director of Every Good Gift. I think the themes that came through were it's possible to connect with people who are very different from you if you take the time to really get engaged in their life. What may not have come through was Jill was a single person for most of the time that she's worked. She only recently was married. As a suburban single white woman ministering and helping largely much younger Black and Hispanic folks from the inner city that have a very different lived experience, it's still possible to connect. And Jill reminds us that we really just want to be loved and seen and cared for and accepted. Those are the things everybody wants. And when we get to those, we can really connect and even form a community. So I thought that was really powerful and how she's done that. It's a word to us that it just takes time and effort, but we can connect with people that are very different from us. They can teach us a lot and we can teach each other a lot and we can help folks and they can help us. It is really possible. Also, on the resources in the show notes, there are links to Every Good Gift's website if you're inspired and would like to support that ministry financially or get involved. You can get connected there. And also links to the two books which were referred to. The first of which is Christ's Kitchen Loving Women Out of Poverty by Jan Martinez. Pretty inspiring book. And then the other one, Bridges Out of Poverty Strategies for Professionals and Communities by three authors, Terry Smith, Ruby Payne, and Philip Duvall. And this is really the basis of those three types of economic classes and how we can bridge across those. So I thought those resources useful if you find yourself impassioned to help in that way. And then, of course, please follow the show so you stay regularly updated in your pod player and share the show with some friends and family who are interested in connecting with folks that may not be like them. I think we can really get a community going if we do that. Until next time, it's Clint, the Ivy League trucker. Keep that shiny side of your vehicle up. Bye.